supposed to be doing, not making copies. Okay. Would the witness come back up here and have a seat, please? And you're still under oath? Very good. And Joe, if you could get her a visor, please. Right there, Joe. A visor that so she doesn't have to wear the mask. Is that the one you had? Okay. All set. Thank you. And then it's real important if you can, I know we got plexiglass, we got masks, we got this, we got that. So try to, the best you can, get that microphone so they can hear you. Thank you very much. Ms. Lumko, are you all set to go?
We are, thank you.
Oh, now we lost Caleb. Officer, could you go get Caleb Saunders for me, please? Tell him we're starting. Unless he doesn't want to come. Okay, we're back here on the record. We had an afternoon for a lunch break, and now the jury is not present. My understanding is they are all here, ready to come in. With the witnesses here on the witness stand again for further direct testimony. Thank you. So let's stand for the jury. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I trust you had a good lunch. Have a seat, please, and we'll continue on with the trial. I don't like that. Mr. Saunders, could I talk to you for a moment? And Mr. Angelo.
Now, Marsha, when we left off, I was asking you some questions about the foundation you had gotten involved in, and as well as your mother since her disappearance. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Now, with respect to your relationship with your mother, you indicated that you were the oldest of her 3 children. And in growing up, you further had indicated that your biological father was Darrell Edges. Is that right?
Yes.
And do you recall when, again, what year he passed away?
I believe it was 1995.
Okay. And at the time, you previously had given your date of birth in 72, so you would have been approximately 12 years old at the time that he would have passed away. Does that sound right?
No, I was in my 20s.
I'm sorry, my math's a little off. So you would have been, at the time that, if you were born in 72 and he had passed away in 95.
I think it's about 23.
Okay,
Or 22.
okay. And your parents.
It's hard to hear you, so I think I know we got plexiglass, we have this, we have that because of COVID, but you really need to amplify the best you can
Okay.
so everybody can hear you. Thank you.
So at some point then, as you're growing up, chronologically, I'll take you back. At some point, are you living in a household with your mom, Vicki, and your biological father, Daryl?
Yes.
And in the years that you were growing up in that household, at some point, did your mother leave your father?
Yes.
At the age that you were at that time, and do you recall how old you were when that happened?
I was almost 12.
Right. At that time, and at that age, as you're growing up in that household, did you have cause to see physical abuse against your mother from Daryl?
Yes.
And you yourself were able to physically see injuries that were sustained by her?
Yes.
And at that time and through the years as you were growing up, did you see whether or not your mother was telling people about that?
Not always. Just her close circle knew. She had excuses for her bruises.
That's what I was going to say, though. Was she indicating to others that they had been caused at the hands of your father, or was she making excuses about how she received them?
Making excuses.
Your perception of your mother then and through the years, was your mother a very proud woman?
Yes.
Was it important to her that there were things that she kept private to herself?
Yes.
And was the marital harmony or discord something that you were able to see was something she wasn't sharing with others?
Yes.
But you could see it because you were living in the household?
Yes.
Now, at some point, you already identified the defendant, Jim Prokopovitz. Did your mother begin a relationship with Mr. Prokopovitz?
Yes.
Do you recall when that was?
I don't remember the year. I associate everything with how old I was. I was around 12. It was after I turned 12, and I turned 12 in October. So, yeah, it was sometime around October-ish. And then we ended up moving in with him after Christmas.
And ultimately, did they get married then?
Yes.
And do you remember when that happened?
I believe that was 1989.
Okay. October 7th?
Yes.
So at some point now, your mother had left your father and she has begun a relationship with Mr. Prokopovitz?
Yeah, she didn't start a relationship right away with him. It happened after the divorce and a period of time.
Okay.
So the divorce was final. I think we left him about when I was 11. I was in 5th grade, just started 5th grade. And by the time I was starting 6th grade.
All right. And so at some point then, and we've already heard a little bit of testimony that when your mother marries Jim Prokopovitz, that your family moved in with his family, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And is that when you've already previously testified that you had 2 step-siblings?
Mm-hmm.
When you're moving, your parents are now getting married, who's living initially in the household with you? I'm taking you back to, well, I guess this would be 1989 when they got married.
Okay. Who's living in the household?
Yeah.
That would be my mom and dad, which is Jim, and my sister, Stacey, my brother, Wes, and myself.
Okay.
So 5 of us.
Okay. And what about Lisa Mastey and Wally?
They were not living there at the time.
Okay. Were there at times that they were living in the household, though, at some point?
Prior to them getting married, when we first moved in with Jim, they were in that home with us there.
Okay. I'm following. So at some point, you're all living together, but that was before they got married?
Yes.
All right. But at some point, when you're living in the household with not only Wes and Stacey, but now Lisa and Wally, do you have somewhat of a blended family?
Yes.
Do you spend time together?
Yep, we ate dinner together.
Okay. And you also got to know Lisa and Wally?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
You
back,
have to answer yes or no,
Yes.
right? Thank you.
and back then, do you recall, how was everybody getting along?
We got along well.
Okay. And then was there an incident that occurred in 1992 that was pretty significant, where somebody was injured?
Wes was burned.
Okay. And do you recall how that happened?
He was mixing some 2-cycle oil for his dirt bike, and his friend pushed it over on him, and he was lit on fire and burned from his shoulders to his knees,
Okay.
and spent 6 months in the Milwaukee Burn Center.
Okay. And when you're talking about now that Milwaukee Burn Center, he was staying down at that facility?
Yeah, I think he only left 2 times. He had to stay. We left once for Christmas. We checked him out, and I think we did like a day trip or something. Other than that, he stayed there 100% of the time because he needed care.
And did you have the opportunity to see your mother's reaction to all of this?
Yes, she was terrified for him, and the very first weekend, I talked her into going home because I think she needed some rest, and so I talked her into going home, and that Andy and I would stay, and Wes spiked a fever and a bad infection, and she never left after that.
Okay. So the one time after a week, she did leave, but then she wouldn't leave again.
She wouldn't leave again, no.
Okay. So she had been very devoted to Wes and his care through that ordeal, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, through the years, Victoria, as a mother to all of you, we've heard this phrase that she sometimes had good days and bad days. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and I feel like the accident definitely magnified that during those months of October to March or April, both for her and for Wes, were very difficult times, reliving the trauma, and those were harder days, and we knew to give them space.
So the reference that's been made in this case relative to good days or bad days, is that in reference to essentially your mother's mental health?
Yes.
Okay. After that incident and through the years then, did your mother suffer from some bouts of depression?
Yes.
Okay. And that's something that you all knew and were aware of?
Yes.
Now, at some point, with respect to that, your mother did receive some treatment through psychiatrists or doctors for her mental health issues. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. And relative to any diagnoses, it was brought up that your mother had suffered from a multi-personality disorder. Were you aware of that?
A very brief period of it, yes.
And so it's clear for this jury, when did that actually diagnose, or when was that something that had been raised in her world?
That was before I got married, and I got married in 1992.
Okay. So in 1992 was the one time there was a reference to something like that. Is that right?
Sometime in between 1991 and 1992.
Okay.
Yes.
And with respect to your mother's mental health, as we indicated, that is something that was known.
Yes.
But was that something that was very personal and private to her?
Yes.
Is it difficult for you to hear something like that be exploited in any way when that multi-personality disorder was back over, I guess it would have been more than 25 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. With respect to depression, though, that was something that was in her world at times.
Yes.
Okay. And just like anything, sometimes she was attempting to address it and she was living with that.
Yes.
And in turn, all of you had to live with that.
Yes.
Now, at some point, I'm directing your attention to 2000, or strike that. At some point when you were living in a residence and you were a young person, was there an incident where you came upon your mom in what was perceived as an attempt, a suicide attempt in a vehicle?
Yes.
How did that occur?
I don't remember the details about how it happened or why it happened. I know that she wanted the suffering to end. She was in a car in the garage with the garage doors shut. The car was running, and my sister and I walked in and begged her to come back in.
Okay. And you know, I'm sorry, did you say how old you would have been?
Probably 15, 16, 15.
Okay. And Stacey is the sister you're referring to?
Yes.
She would have been younger than you?
Yes.
Okay. If she doesn't have much of a recollection of that, you can't answer to that, but you recollect it.
Yes.
Okay. So if you were born in 72 and you thought you were about 15, that would have been like 1987?
Yeah.
That'd be right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So again, that was some time ago.
Yes.
Besides that attempt, was there also an incident that occurred where Wes had also located your mom after a suicide attempt?
Yes.
And when did that occur?
That was about 2002, I believe.
If Pulaski records indicate 2003 around Thanksgiving time.
That would probably be right.
Okay. At the time of that incident, and we've already heard some of the circumstances of it, but did you ever talk to your mom about that incident?
Yes.
Okay. But she didn't make any statements to you, concerning statements, as she did to Stacey, is that right, about that incident?
No, she was angry and said that it shouldn't have happened that way.
Okay. Other than that incident then, there had been talk of something occurring in 2008, which was an accidental overdose. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
And with respect to the 2003 incident versus 2008, were you aware that she had attempted to leave a note in 2003?
No.
Okay.
In 2003, she left notes. Yes.
Okay.
I
But
don't-
not in 2008.
Not in 2008.
Do you remember that your father was also indicating that it was just accidental?
Yes.
Okay, so that was perceived, there was no issue regarding that being more than something as too much medication, was it?
Yes.
Okay. And then besides the mental health issues, your mother's physical health, was she diagnosed with a significant diagnosis in the summer of 2012?
Yes, she had colon cancer.
Okay. And as a result of that, did she have any medical treatment or surgery?
She had a surgery, yes.
Okay. And do you know what that surgery was for with the colon cancer?
For the cancer, I don't know the details about what happened, but I do know that she ended up with a colostomy bag.
Okay.
And she was very frail at the time, very no muscle tone and very thin.
Do you know how tall your mom was?
I believe 5'3".
Okay. And when you say frail or thin, could you estimate around that time about how much she weighed?
I think she weighed under 100 pounds when she was in that hospital bed.
Okay. And that surgery would have been in June of 2012?
Yes.
Now, after that surgery in June, did she have another surgery in October?
Yes, to have the colostomy bag removed.
Did they call that a reversal?
Yes.
All right.
She wasn't supposed to have it that early, but she was doing well.
Okay. Did you have the opportunity to talk to her about her thoughts on having that colostomy bag?
She didn't like it.
All right. Did she share concerns about accidents or things?
Yes.
And again, your perception of your mom through these years, did she find pride in her appearance?
Very much so.
Now, after she had that reversal in October, did you have cause to go to her house in November of 2012 to pick something up?
I did.
And do you recall when you went there in November? Early, late?
I want to say it was like mid-November. I don't know the exact date.
All right. But that's November of 2012.
Yes.
Did something concerning occur on that date?
Yes, I had arranged to go there, so she knew I was coming, to pick up some equipment that needed to be sent back in a timely manner. And I had already left the house when my son called and said, "Grandpa called, you need to call him." And
Let me stop you there. Who's Grandpa?
Grandpa would be Jim.
Okay.
And I was kind of startled because he doesn't call me. And so I called him and he said, "Mom isn't doing good. Today's not a good day. Can you come a different day?" And I said, "I can't come a different day because I have to send these things out on time. Andy's off today and I'm halfway there." I said, "If she's not feeling well, I will just leave her. I won't bother her and I'll just get these things." And so we went to the house anyways.
Well, let me ask you about that. At the time when you're speaking with your father, is he rather insistent of the fact that he doesn't want you coming there?
Very much.
Okay. And in hindsight now, that was concerning to you?
Yes.
So when you're going over to the house, approximately how long did it take you to get from your house over to your parents' house then?
40 minutes,
40-minute drive?
something like that.
So at the time you're getting this, you're already like how far?
More than 20 minutes.
Okay. And when I'm talking about your parents' house, where were they located or living then?
On Coonish Road.
5118?
Yes.
And that's located in the town of Pittsfield, Brown County, Wisconsin?
Yes.
At the time now, you're going over there, this is you and your husband, Andy?
Yes.
All right. So what do you do? Despite getting that phone call, what do you do?
We go anyways.
Okay.
And
And do you arrive there?
we arrive there.
And then what happens?
And so I start looking for the equipment to send back. And Jim is very frazzled and doesn't seem to know where anything is. And I had asked about my mom. And he said she wasn't feeling well. I didn't go into the room right away. I was looking for the remotes. And I knew that one of them probably was in the room. So I went in the room, and my mom was laying at the end of the bed, like if she was sitting down at the end of the bed and then fell back. And she was just wearing her underwear and a white t-shirt. There was some blood, dried blood on the t-shirt, which didn't strike me as anything wrong right away because she gets bloody noses. But what did concern me is that she wasn't awake and she didn't even appear to be normally sleeping, and that he went over to her and he said, "Hun," and he picked up her arms to lift her to sitting, and she just flopped back on the bed. And I knew there was something wrong because she didn't even respond. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't roll her eyes. She did nothing. And I'm like, "We need to take her to the hospital. We need to call the ambulance." And he said, no, we can't call the ambulance. And I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, "Put her in my truck. I can get her to the hospital faster than taking an ambulance." And he said, "No, this is what happened when she was in the hospital, when she had a reaction to her medicine. I'm sure that's what this is." And so he started going about looking for the rest of the remote controls. And so once we collected everything, he sat down at the table and I said, I really think we should take her to the hospital. And he said, "Nope, she's going to be fine." He said, I will have her give you a call when she gets up." And I said, "When I get home, I'm going to call. And if she has not gotten up, we are calling an ambulance." And so later when I was at home, I called and he said, "Oh yeah, she woke up and she had a chicken salad sandwich. She went back." I asked to speak to her and he said, "Well, she went back to bed. You can talk to her later."
So Marsha, at the time that you're coming into this room, as you're seeing this, is this somewhat startling to you?
Frightening.
Okay. And when you're describing the demeanor that you've had the opportunity to see of your mom, does she appear to be responsive?
No.
But she does appear to be breathing?
Yes.
Okay. But it did not appear at that time that she was capable of moving around or waking up?
No.
Okay. At the time that this happened back in November of 2012, you didn't have any reason to question the information that Jim was giving you, is that right?
No. And he said that this is similar to the response she had in the hospital. And I do know she had a response in the hospital. I wasn't there to see it, so I wasn't sure. But I never mentioned it to my mom because it was so embarrassing to her that she had that response in the hospital. So after that event, when I did talk to my mom, I didn't ask her about it. And I had no reason to think that Jim was lying to me.
Back then.
Back then, until now, she's missing.
So let's back up. At the time that you're on the phone with Jim,
Yep.
did it appear he was attempting to prevent you from coming to the house?
The first phone call, yes.
And now at the time that you arrive at the house, you're indicating that his demeanor is what?
He's very distracted, very agitated. He doesn't know what to do.
Okay. But then when you are now in the bedroom and you're talking to him about calling for help, calling someone, what is his demeanor?
He starts to calm down and he's like, "She's fine. She's fine."
Okay.
And then he's like, "Hun," and then he lifted her arms and she just flopped back.
And then that's when he discouraged you from calling.
Yes.
In hindsight, Marsha, do you wish you would have called somebody?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel you walked in on something at that time?
I do.
Okay. Now, at the time that this occurred, you indicated that you did not talk to your mom about it, right?
No, I didn't.
And at that time, you were getting along fine with your stepdad, Jim Prokopovitz.
Yes.
All right. Now, through the years, with the relationship that your mom had with Jim, at some point you're living in the house, but at some point you get married and you have your own family. Is that right?
Yes.
And when did you and Andy get married?
1992.
Right. And at that time, you've already referred to the fact that you have 2 sons, correct?
Yes.
All right. And the life that you had through the years, was that a pretty busy lifestyle?
Yes.
Busy with your kids' activities?
Yes.
And you had a large circle of friends.
Yes.
Now, although you're not living in the household with your mother, are you still in pretty frequent contact with her when things are going good for your mom?
Yes.
All right.
Sometimes 3 phone calls a day.
How often?
Sometimes 3 phone calls a day.
Okay. And you would spend time with her through the years at various times at functions?
Yes.
Did your mom like to attend parties when she was feeling good?
Yes, she'd even come and play video games with my boys.
Okay. Did your mom have a favorite holiday?
She loved Christmas.
And with respect to that, her house on Coonish Road, was there a reflection of that love for Christmas?
Yes.
Okay. And what was that?
She decorated the basement for Christmas year-round.
Okay. Now, there was also some talk about some things that had been glued down. You're aware your mom would do that?
She loved glue. Everything had to be glued down because I think it started out when we were young that we might knock it over, but then it became that the cats might knock it over. So she glued everything.
And at the time that your mom went missing, did she have any pets?
She did. She had 2 cats and a bird.
Okay. Were there also concerns about the cats knocking things over?
I'm sure.
Okay. And did she appear to care and love for her pets as well?
Very much so. They were like her children.
All right. Now, the incident that you've just described in November of 2012, is that the last time you saw your mom?
It's the last time I saw my mom.
Okay. But before she went missing in April then of 2013, you had spoken on the phone with her through the months?
Yes.
And at some point, now I'm directing your attention to April 25th and 26th of 2013. How did you learn that your mom was missing?
My sister called me.
And again, your sister is?
Stacey.
All right. Do you remember when she called you and gave you that news?
It was in the afternoon around, I think maybe 1:30, 2:30 in the afternoon.
And would that have been on Friday?
On Friday, April 26th.
Okay. And when you got that news, what did you do?
I called Jim.
Okay. And do you remember what he said to you?
She's gone.
And those are the words he used, she is gone?
I said, what do you mean she's gone? He said, she's finally done it.
Okay. And that's what Jim was impressing upon you had happened?
Yes,
He's finally
finally done it.
done it. In response to that, and hearing now that your mom is missing, what do you do?
Well, I started asking him where I thought she would be, and he didn't know. And so I started thinking about where I thought she would go. So before going to the house, I stopped at the cemetery because we have an older sister that died at birth before me. And my mom would go to the cemetery, and you would know anytime she'd been there because she'd meticulously groomed the grave, picking all the strands of grass around it. And so if my mom was going to do something to hurt herself, she would have reached out to one of us, which she hadn't, and otherwise gone there. How she would have gotten there, I have no idea. But that was what I was thinking.
Okay.
And there was no sign that anyone had been there. It was April. The gravestone was not groomed at all.
And you don't know, around that time and after your mom had had some health issues, it's been reported that she wasn't as mobile as she had previously been. Would you agree with that?
Yes, there were times that she would use a cane. She wasn't proud to use it because she didn't want to have to depend on it, but her one leg would fall out from underneath her without any warning. So the cane was to prevent that.
When you're referring to that cane, that was something you had seen your mom with?
And a couple of times, yes.
That was something she was using more in fall of 2012, is that right?
Yes.
And at the time that your mom went missing, were you advised that she had left anything behind?
Her purse, her money, her cell phone, her cigarettes. She's a 3-pack-a-day smoker. She would not go anywhere without her cigarettes, so that was concerning.
Okay.
If she was to leave the house, she would have taken her purse. We also, when we searched the house, found her dentures, which I don't know why she would have left the house without her dentures.
Right. So at the time that Victoria is missing, there's a search of the house to look for what belongings were left.
Yes.
You seem pretty meticulous.
Use the microphone, Ms. Lumpko. If you would, thank you.
So you, Marsha, being familiar with your mom and her personal things, were you attempting to look at what was left behind?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 27. Do you recognize that?
That's my mom's purse.
And as for the record, I'm opening this. Do the items inside of it appear to be consistent with her personal belongings?
Yes.
Now, as I'm also opening the side, I'm showing you an item. What is this?
It's her driver's license.
Okay. Is that further an identifying piece of information she would not have just left behind?
Right.
And I'm also showing you one other card. What is that?
Her social security card.
Does that have her name on it?
Yes, it does.
I'm also showing you
A prayer card that I gave her.
And what does it say on the top of that?
It says, "Don't quit."
Don't quit. And you gave that to her?
Yes.
So you recognize these as items that belong to your mother?
Yes.
I'm also showing you it's been marked as State's Exhibit number 28. Do you recognize that?
That's her cell phone?
And that's something you had seen her with before?
Yes.
And I'm showing you it's been marked as Exhibit 46. Recognize this?
That's her cane.
Okay. And you seem to have knowledge of why she was using that cane. Do you remember? You're not sure with me why she would need the cane now and then?
Yeah, because her one leg would give out from time to time.
And that issue with her leg giving out from time to time, do you know what that was because of?
She wasn't sure, and she wasn't proud to use the cane, but it was starting to happen more often.
Okay. And she had shared that with you?
Yes.
Now, there's been some talk about your mom's ability or the fact that she would walk around now and then. Was that something that you were familiar with her doing in the last year?
Walking around?
Yeah.
I know that when she had the reversal, she was encouraged to walk from the surgery. And so she originally started walking around in the house, and then she was told she needed to expand, and so she would walk around in the yard.
Now, when you're talking about the yard, was she known to leave the property walking around, when she was walking around then, or? Okay. So it's just not misconstrued around this time, based upon your knowledge of your mother, she would not have been walking outside that property.
No.
Are you familiar with the layout of that Coonish Road address
Yes.
and the rural nature of it?
Yes.
Are you familiar if there were many lights or street lights near that house at night?
I don't believe there was streetlights. There was one, I don't know if you call it a pole light or something in their yard, but it was pretty dark.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Is this an aerial map of that Coonish area address?
Yes, it is.
And if we have an identification of the house being on the Coonish Road area, are you kind of familiar with the neighborhood there?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. Had you ever gone walking with your mom down the street?
No.
Had you ever gone walking with your mom down the trail?
No.
Okay. So again, when we're talking, was your mom known to be walking down that trail around this time?
No.
Okay. In fact, would you be surprised if she ever did that?
Yes.
Around the time that, we'll strike that. Based upon your knowledge of your mom through the years, did your mom have many friends that she kept in touch with out of state?
I knew of one friend out of state,
Okay. And who is that?
Mike Simmons.
Okay. Other than him, did you know of any other friends out of state that she was keeping in touch with?
No, and the last she had kept in touch with him was when Wes was burned. She wanted to get him in the burn center in Minnesota.
So that's 1992?
Yes.
So in the years preceding her going missing, you don't know of anybody she was keeping in touch with outside of the state?
No.
And certainly not regularly.
No.
Was your mom known to travel outside the state?
No, just once to Minnesota.
And do you know when that would have been?
That would have been right after her divorce.
Okay. And if she married Jim in 89, that would have predated that.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever know your mom to travel out of the country?
No.
Did your mom have a passport?
No.
At the time that your mom went missing, did she have her own car?
No, she did not.
Was she known to even be driving herself in the last year or two of her life?
No.
So she would rely on others to take her places?
Yes.
Had you ever known her to call a cab?
No.
And back in 2013, I don't think that they had Uber. Was she known to take an Uber?
No.
Okay. At the time that your mom went missing, well, let's backtrack a little bit. You've now gotten a phone call from Jim, and you've heard your mom is missing. What do you do? Where do you go?
I went to the house after I went to the cemetery.
So you did go there on that Friday?
I did.
Okay. And when you go there, do you remember who was there?
Jim was in the recliner. Wes was upstairs in his sitting room. And that was it.
Okay.
And myself and my husband.
Okay. And at that point, are you aware that law enforcement's been notified she's missing?
Yes, that law enforcement had just left and were supposed to be, I believe, coming back.
All right. And do you know, was Jim talking about something regarding a search or then coming back with dogs or anything?
Yes, he told us that they were coming over the weekend with these highly trained dogs, that if you let them out of their kennel and the person was in the vicinity, the dog would run right to them. And so he was concerned with us being there because he did not want to confuse the dogs with our scent.
And Jim told you that?
Yes.
Okay. At the time that you have now heard your mom is missing, do you make phone calls to people? What do you do?
Well, that Sunday when so this is the 28th,
Okay.
when we still have not heard from her and we have no idea, then we start combing through who could she have possibly called, and we start making phone calls to everyone that we know. And then we decide that we need to put something out on social media.
And when you're saying we, who's leading and organizing the searches on that Sunday?
On that Sunday, the Brown County Sheriff's Department was there, Roman was there, and they had people in paws. And so there were dogs there. And then my sister Stacey and I were there. Lisa came, and then we start talking about who should we call, and we start making phone calls.
And when you're talking about Lisa, that's the Lisa Mastey, your stepsister?
Yes.
She is Jim's biological daughter.
Yes.
She also, through the years, had grown close to your mother?
Yes.
Did your mother babysit her children at times?
Yes.
Okay. So you, Stacey, Lisa, you're all there. This People in Paws, is it called?
Mm-hmm.
Was that organized by law enforcement or you?
By law enforcement.
Okay. And at the time that you are there, you said Jim was at the house. Essentially, when you're there, what is Jim doing?
We arrived there at 7 a.m, and the first thing he did was he cracked a beer.
Okay. And how did you feel about that?
I was surprised. I mean, we were all nervous. I don't know why he was drinking at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. And did you have the opportunity to see what he was doing when you were searching?
Well, at one point we all had to go outside because they were going to search in the house.
Okay.
And he was, at that time, leaning against the back of the truck, saying, I know that they think that I did something to her.
Okay. And that's what he's saying?
That's what he's saying.
All right. And what are you doing?
And we're crying because we're like, we just can't understand what's going on. And then we said, well, they have to look at you because you were the last person to see her. They have to look at all of us. They have to find her.
So you weren't offended by that?
No.
Okay. What was at that point, are you hoping, you're just hoping to find your mom?
I'm hoping that the dogs find my mom. Like he explained that the dogs would be, shoot out and go find her.
Sure.
But it was an all-day thing, and they were on four-wheelers and all over the place and asking questions, and we ended that night with no answers.
And at that time then, when they're doing the search, you have the opportunity to visually see where they're searching?
Yes.
Did it appear to you that they were searching all around the area?
Yeah, they were on four-wheelers. They went down to, there's a cemetery. They were on the Mountain Bay Trail. They were searching around properties. To me, I felt like they were doing everything that they could possibly do.
Okay. And Marsha, as we're looking at Exhibit 1 again, with the house being on this exhibit, is it your understanding that, so if we're looking at this exhibit, you could just step down and indicate what area you saw yourself that they were starting to search?
They were searching over here, back here, and up this way. And they lead people off to gas stations and things like that to put her poster up.
Surrounding businesses?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time, are you and your family hoping to find some sign she's okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that took most of the day?
Yeah, I want to say it started at like 7 in the morning and went to like 4 or 5 at night.
Okay. On that day, did you have the opportunity to hear anything else Jim may have said that was concerning to you about your mother being missing?
Yeah, he was sitting in the kitchen at the table and he's like, I don't know what we're going to do with all of her shit. Look at all this stuff. This place is too big for 2 people. And then he said, I know she didn't want an obituary. And he said, we're gonna have to call up a U-Haul or something like that to take all this stuff to Goodwill.
And how did you feel about a comment like that from him?
Well, we didn't know where my mom was, so that was confusing. And the only thing I knew is in the pit of my stomach is I thought something's not right.
Because you're still hoping your mom's going to walk through that door?
Right, we still haven't found her, so why are we talking about getting rid of her things?
Sure. Besides that comment right away that day, and that was Sunday, you said?
Sunday, April 28th.
And in the ensuing days and weeks, were there any other references made by Jim about saving money with your mother gone?
Yes, there was a day that we sat at the table and he was telling us how much money he was saving because the lights weren't on all the time and that he had dropped her off his medical insurance. And then that was when he also shared with us that he had a lady friend.
Okay. So you just mentioned something about he discussed with you taking Vicky off his medical insurance?
Yes,
Okay.
I got very upset about that.
Okay. And he also spoke about saving money on a lighting or WPS bill?
Yeah, because the lights weren't on all the time.
Did he ever make a mention of saving money on her medication?
No.
Okay. Now, these types of statements that were made, were these hurtful to you?
Very hurtful.
You also referred to the fact that he talked about having a lady friend. What is that about? Do you remember where you first learned about that?
Yeah, we were sitting at that table, and he said that he had met this lady friend, and that wasn't like he just met her, but that he'd known her for years, and that we would really like her, that she had 2 kids our age, and that had he known that she got divorced, he'd have never married my mom.
Well, let's talk about that. Through the years, were you aware that there were concerns by your mom about infidelity with your dad?
Yes.
And specifically, had you received information that he may have had some extramarital affairs?
Yes.
Was there ever a time that he was even in your room talking to somebody?
Yes.
When was that? What was that about?
That was when we lived on Comanche, and we had come home, and he was talking in a flirtatious voice in our bedroom. And when we told my mom about it, he told my mom we were lying. And so my mom bought a caller ID and hid it, knowing that we weren't lying.
Was there, okay, strike that. You made a reference that he told you that if he had known Kathy Friday was available, that he wouldn't, well, strike that. The other woman, did you come to learn who the other woman was?
Yes, Kathy Friday.
Okay. And at some point, looking back, had there also been information about him making contact with a woman around the time of his wedding day to your mom?
Can you repeat the question?
That Jim has now made a reference that if he had known that Kathy was available, he wouldn't have married your mom. Do you
Yes.
recall that?
He said that to Stacey and I when we were at the table.
Okay. So this is all being said to you, and do you know what date this is happening?
This is in June, approximately
Okay,
a little less than 2 months.
okay. And so 2 months from when she goes missing?
Yes,
Could it have been late June?
yes,
If Stacey thought it was July, could it have been late June, early July?
possible.
You think you have a better memory than your sister?
There
You
was,
know
there
it
was
was
a
a
lot
couple.
happening, so it was about June, July.
Okay,
Something like that.
so you know it was a couple months, just a couple months after your mom's missing?
Yes,
All right. And at the time that you are having this discussion at the table, this is the Coonish Road address, and is Wes there?
Wes is upstairs.
So it's just you and Stacey and Jim?
Yeah, and I think our kids might have been there upstairs with Wes.
Okay. But all of the things that he is telling you at this time, they come as a surprise?
Yeah, it felt like a dagger in my heart.
Okay. The talk of the saving money and things, that had happened within a couple days of your mom being missing, but it's this lady friend and everything else that's coming about at the kitchen table.
Him saying that had he known that she'd gotten divorced, he'd have never married my mom.
That was hurtful.
That was very hurtful.
You said when he referred to this new lady friend, he said it was somebody who had been around in his life then.
Yes, he'd known her for 30 years.
Okay. Did he make any reference to having contact with Kathy on birthdays?
He told me that he got in contact with her because it was she that got in contact with him, that she called his work and got his cell phone number after hearing his wife had been missing.
Okay.
And then I did hear another story that he used to call her on her birthdays from time to time.
Okay.
And then I also heard that they had run into each other at the casino, so I'm not really sure how they actually got together.
You heard different versions.
3 different versions, yes.
Okay. At the time that you've heard this information now, did you yourself know Kathy Friday?
No,
All right. And ultimately, at some point, though, did you receive contact from a Jennifer Friday?
I did.
And who is Jennifer Friday?
Jennifer is Kathy's daughter.
And do you remember when you first got contact from Jennifer?
It was around the end of September, beginning of October,
And we're still in 2013?
2013.
So that would be 5-6 months after your mom's now missing?
Yes,
And at the time, is Jennifer aware her mother's in a relationship with your stepdad?
yes,
Okay. And did she express concerns about that?
she did.
Now, ultimately, does Jim get into a relationship with Kathy Friday?
He does.
And after your mom went missing, in the weeks that are ensuing in the first couple of months, are you yourself in contact with Jim?
Yes, I call him every couple of days for sure, every week.
And at that time, were you trying to check in on Jim and see if he's okay?
Yeah, I was very worried about him. He said he wasn't sleeping and he wasn't eating, so I was concerned.
And that's what he told you.
Yes,
But then after the incident at the kitchen table, when you learned more about his life, did you lose some of the concern you had?
yes,
At some point through the years then, or strike that, at some point did Jim move out of that Coonish Road address?
he did.
And do you know when that happened?
I think it was about 2017 that he moved in with Kathy.
Okay. And so at some point in 2013, you are made aware that he is dating Kathy,
Yes,
and that relationship continued through those years?
yes, he stayed there pretty much on the weekends.
At the time that you are first hearing about Kathy Friday, you indicated throughout 2013 you're still in touch with Jim and you're calling him.
Yes,
At some point, did it get more difficult for you to reach Jim?
yes.
And how did that occur?
He stopped answering my calls and he wouldn't return my messages.
Okay.
So then, because I knew he was at Kathy's, I would call Kathy's house phone.
And was that the way that you were able to then reach Jim?
Yes,
Now, your brother Wes, after your mother went missing, did he continue to reside in that household with Jim initially?
he did.
And the relationship that Wes had with your mother, would you describe it as close?
They were very close.
And do you believe that they shared some similar things as well?
Yes, I think they both suffered some depression that they could relate to each other on.
With you being the sister and kind of the big sister of Wes, you were familiar with his personality and how he was?
Yes.
Now, how would you describe Wes?
Well, Wes is quiet. It takes a lot to get him to talk. He doesn't open up to very many people. And there's times where he's quiet with me, and then there's times where he's chatty. But I think He's experienced a lot of trauma in his life, and I think his circle is very small. I think he's lost without my mom.
Yeah. He loved your mom a lot.
Yeah.
Now, Marsha, at some point, were there concerns that you had relative to Jim and Kathy Friday and their relationship and their truthfulness about some things?
Yes.
And those were related to the disappearance of, strike that, those were related to their relationship around the time of your mom's disappearance?
Yes.
And as a result, did you offer testimony in a court hearing?
Yes.
And you were aware that Jim did as well?
Yes.
As well as Kathy?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to Jim about his testimony in that hearing?
No.
At some point, did you have a telephone conversation with Jim where he asked you if the police were going to come and just arrest him?
Yes.
Is that concerning to you?
Very.
Did you also have a telephone conversation with Jim where he talked about he should just flee?
Yes.
And was that concerning to you?
Very. Now, Marsha, through the years until this happened with your mom, how would you describe your relationship with Jim as a stepfather to you? I called him Dad. He walked me down the aisle. My dad was still alive, but I asked him to walk me down the aisle. I listed him as my dad in my wedding announcement. I looked up to him.
I have no further questions.
Okay, I'll tell you what, why don't we take an afternoon break? This seems to be a good time. And we'll start up when we come back with Mr. D'Angelo examination. So if you would go with bailiff Tom, I appreciate that. Thank you. Stand for the jury. All right, we'll see everybody at approximately 2:30. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can step down if you'd like to. Thank you.